I'm so excited. Welcome everybody to Fabulous Friday, Wise Women Being Visible. I've got a super special guest for us today, Melody. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Let me introduce Melody in the way that I know Melody. Melody is a beautiful woman who came into my sphere and circle. We came into each other's sphere and circle coming up to nearly 3 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. And tell me if you disagree, but does not Melody remind you of Meryl Streep, for goodness sake?
Oh, Sal.
100%. See? Do you not see that, everybody? Drop a yes, wherever it is you're coming from. Melody always, whenever her face comes onto the screen, I think of Meryl Streep and that incredible talent. And Melody has this as well. She's just completed a section, which I'm going to get you to talk more of a journey, which is not just like any journey. I'm going to let Melody go on what this journey is. And when you find out what Melody's age is, you will not believe this. You will not believe this. So, talk about wise women. You know, it's an agelessness wisdom of women, but really, something that totally inspires me about Melody is her ability to continue to deepen in her own practice of following her wisdom and living a life that is uncompromisingly her own. So, if you're a woman who is struggling to feel like you are on purpose, whether you're retired, whether you're looking at retirement, whether you're a professional woman, whether you're someone who is just coming to a place where you don't feel you know yourself, then Melody is really someone to get to know and to look at in her Facebook group. I'm just going to pop it up here because she's got a Facebook group that you can join where she does weekly meditations and offerings, and she's hugely wise. And she sent me one of my favorite books in the world. We bonded
It is a
over a
goodie. It
very
is a good book.
we bonded over spirituality, didn't we?
We did. Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
Yep.
we both align to a concept of spirituality, not necessarily aligned to religion. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I, and I think that's where so many of us are. There's a real realization that there's a real deep wisdom inside of us that has nothing to do with uh, traditional religion at all.
Mm,
It
mm.
goes beyond that, and it unifies us beyond those restrictions, those walls, those barriers.
And tell me, Melody, how did you come to this place for you of exploring spirituality? Like, could you give us like is it how did you grow up with this, or like, yeah,
Sure.
what was the awakening for you?
Well, I did grow up in a family that went to church in a traditional kind of a way, but I grew up in the Bay Area in California in the 60s and 70s where there was a lot of action going on, all kinds of things happening in California. And I was not I was fairly timid, but I was certainly the vibes were in the air. So I knew all that kind of exploration that was going on. And really, from my teens, I actually had it wasn't a vision, but it was a kind of knowing, and it kind of came out of nowhere. And I didn't have the language for it at that time, but I actually said to myself, I think I'm going to wake up this lifetime. And I was like, I didn't even know what that meant. But
Mm,
I've always kind of had a deep sense of connection with the divine. Um, Even when
I
times
love that.
have been tough.
Well, certainly San Francisco at that time was it's almost like it must have been like a ley line or something really important globally, because you're right, there was that kind of madness as well as chaos around breaking down old ways of values and beings. And, you know, definitely that spirit of awakening and wondering and curiosity, and also not having language, I would say. And so music became a very frenetic part of that opening, didn't it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
opening the mind through music.
Yeah.
And your mother was an opera singer.
My mother was an opera singer. Yep. Yep.
And did you get into the music of the 60s at that point?
I listened to it, obviously. I mean, it was, teenagers listen to a lot of music. I listened to music, and that, there's not many 60s and 70s songs that you can't play that I can't sing along with. So, yes, I listened to them. And my sense really is that, energetically, there are some songs from that period that carry a vibration that is useful for the world even today, that they were encoded, if you will, with the world changing, the change that we saw then, and as it has morphed into where we are now, that those songs, that music was imprinted with the beginnings of that transition.
I would totally agree. I'm not sure, is there a song that comes to mind for you?
Well, I mean, obviously John Lennon's, song, it comes to mind, that, Imagine, that we all, I think many of us love that song. That's one for sure. Much of the Beatles music, certainly, I want to say the Five Seasons, but I don't think that's right. The people who wrote the song about the Aquarian age.
Okay, that's a bit before my time. But I was thinking too, so sort of the resonance for me as a 70s born girl was, I was thinking as you were talking, like Janis Joplin, and and even though that they died, like her and Jimi Hendrix, they still, the vibration of their music really resonates today as well. Like the Watchtower, if you think about the Watchtower card exploding in the tarot as well, and that's actually just an opening of old ideas, and that he distorted the guitar and the pedal, and that we still have that today. That distortion and disruption is always really interesting. And I think that distortion and disruption is part of that spiritual awakening. So then we cut to, you get married, you have some children, and then I know what happens next.
So I had a very heartbreaking divorce for me, and that really, I had been on a spiritual path up to that point, but it really deepened significantly after that. And my experience in the years since, of all the women that I've worked with around their spirituality, is that it is not uncommon for us to come to seeking more internally when we kind of get bopped upside of the head by the universe. That's something, we have a bankruptcy, or somebody in our family dies, or we have a divorce, or we lose a job, or something that is unexpected and is hard emotionally for us. It rattles us out of the path that we're on. It's like we're on this railroad track, and now we get jolted off of it, and we're trying to find our way in a new direction. So that was, for me, got me back on a spiritual path. And
I couldn't agree more, Melody. I could not agree more, because I think that you mentioned 4 things, and maybe if you're listening out there and you think that's me, really take some courage as well for Melody and for myself, of that my mother died, and that was the beginning of I could no longer deny that I was not in touch with some part of myself. I had to, hey, hang on a second here. I just thought she would live a lot longer than she did. She died quite young of cancer. And so, a divorce, it's that loss, it's the end of something that you believed would potentially be forever, or that you had sewn up or something, and then it cracks open. And again, we're like that disruption, that whatever it is. And And then there's like the crack of light, in a way, I say. The crack of light shows up, but you need guides.
Yeah.
You know, and that's
Truly.
true of the heroines, the she journey, you know, that we have to find, and everyone becomes a part of your tapestry and your story. And so one of the things that you've just completed a leg of, why don't you talk to us a little bit about
Sure.
how that divorce emboldened you?
It did embolden me. And one of the things that it's emboldened me to do is take on this. And I don't have no idea whether I'll complete it, but that may not be the point. Where I live in the Pacific Northwest in the U.S., there is a river called the Columbia River, and it is about 1,200 miles long. And I have started to kayak it from its source in British Columbia, Canada, to the Pacific Ocean between Washington and the state of Washington and the state of Oregon. So I just finished 4.5 days of a 70-mile long journey on the river in Canada. So
70 miles, 70 people, 70 miles. Oh my goodness.
I was tired. I must say I was really tired.
But talk us through. So you go with your canoe?
I have a kayak. Yeah.
A kayak?
I had to, there's quite a bit of logistics in planning a big trip like this. And it takes me 2 days to drive to where I needed to drive to. So it's a bit of a hike to get there to start out with. And then I had to figure out, had to make connections with who was going to drop me off and where my car was going to get stored and who was going to pick me up. And I took a GPS, it's called a Garmin InReach. It's a little, like about the size of a cell phone. And it's operated by satellite. So you turn it on and hold it up to the sky and it would connect with the satellite. And I do some tracking a couple of times a day so people back home could track me on a map. And then every night I would say, I made it to camp and I'm fine.
And did you, when you got to camp, like what is camp?
Well, I had to find a place to camp every day. So it was finding a spot where I could get off, where it wasn't so rocky that I could get my kayak off. And it was usually, the water was pretty high this year, so there weren't many beaches. I usually camped on an old part of the highway that hadn't been buried by the dams yet. And so it meant finding a spot and setting up camp and emptying out my 25 dry bags of stuff out of my kayak every night and cooking myself a meal and setting up tent and crashing.
And what are the dangers that you're overcoming or the challenges there? Like,
well, the biggest fear is I'm out, I did this by myself. The biggest fear is that I'm going to the water was very cold. I mean, this glacier's water's coming off of high. These were 9,000 foot mountains. So they were tall and glaciers. So the water was cold, even though it was really hot. Every day I was like splashing water on myself all day long because it was so hot. But so one of the fears is that I'm going to tip the boat over, and get out in the water and get hypothermia and not be able to get myself over to the bank.
Did you tip over at all?
No.
Not once, people.
No, I didn't. You have to find water every day. So I had a filter, a water filter there were many streams coming off these really steep mountains. So I would find a stream every day. This whole trip, what I realized internally for me, it was a deepening of my trust that I was going to be taken care of. And I could feel myself towards the end of the day getting anxious about finding a place to stay for the night, because there were not as many places as I had thought there might be because the water was so high. And I just had to keep saying to myself, Melody, You found water yesterday. You found a spot yesterday. It will be taken care of today. And that became my mantra. You were taken care of yesterday. Today's not going to be any different. But that was, that was a journey for me. It was a journey. I had an experience with a moose.
Tell us. Oh, wow.
I was tracking one day and I had stopped paddling and I was just literally near the bank. I was just letting the kayak drift into the bank, and it was a really steep hill coming down with trees all the way to the water. And I was paying attention. I was down here looking at my Garmin. I didn't have my face up. And I looked up at my boat because I could see we were getting close to the bank. And here are these 4 tall legs at the front of my boat. And I went, ah! And I started paddling backwards. And obviously the moose turned, was as frightened as me. And I kept saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to hurt you. Paddling away quickly. And it was a teenage moose. And she was trying to get away from me as much as I was trying to get away from her. But it was this very sweet interaction. I was very glad it wasn't an adult moose.
Right.
I think in hindsight, when I had been floating in, I'd seen some bushes with little berries. So I think she was at the edge eating some berries. I think that's why she was down at the edge. So that was one of my animal experiences on this trip. It was pretty amazing.
Oh, that is incredible. It's so inspiring. I think that's the word for me with you, is always it's an inspiration to hear your stories and to know that you also do fall back on that spiritual practice. So say more about that trust. What did you how do you apply that today now after your trip? Because I know that these trips always bring more than, my program's called The Gifts of Visibility, because it's in the actions of wise women being visible that a different gift shows up. It's not what we think. Yes, you want more clients. Yes, you'd like to fill your practice. You'd like a business, that all of those elements. And yet it's the internal blossoming and the reality that you become more open to receptivity or to change and transform some part of your life. So I think, what is the gift that takes you into trusting now in life?
So I think it's more about certainly be trying, a little more courageous, taking risks. That was, a risk of some sort to take. And so it
big risk. What do you mean some sort? My God, there's no way I would ever get on a kayak and fucking travel up. I'm 52. I'm like, how do you even lift up a kayak? I can barely lift up a bloody box of groceries from my car to my bloody bench. Excuse my language, so Aussie. But and this might be the perfect segue moment. Excuse me, Melody, would you mind?
No.
No. See, she's not even going to let me tell you, but I can tell you I'm so proud of my age. I don't have no age. I think that owning who we are, our age, is going to say to the women out there that at any age, we're allowed to be visible and to talk about who we are.
Absolutely. That is really one.
But first of all, I'm going to say to people, why don't you have a guess? So I'm 52. How old do you think Melody is here? Just guessing. What would you say? I'm pointing the wrong way because of the camera. I'm like, why is it doing that? Why are we looking the wrong way? Drop down below, really. What would you suggest that is Melody's age right now? So how many miles did you do?
70.
70 miles. I don't even know what that is in kilometers. 70 miles in a kayak, getting out every night, creating a camp.
It's about 100 kilometers.
About 100 kilometers. How many days did you do it?
4.5.
In 4.5 days, she did 100 kilometers in a kayak by herself, loading and unloading things. So just curious, if you're watching this, wherever it is, whatever time it is in the universe, whatever point in your life, just guess right now in the chat. Drop the numbers that you feel is her age. Don't worry, she won't be embarrassed or ashamed. It's a game. Let us know and we'll see if you get it right. I'm going to tell you later. At the end, we'll talk about it.
Well, and I think that is what I see now particularly in this time with women, that the barriers that were previously there around age for women. When I was 50, I felt like I was still 30 in my mind. It felt like I was still 30. When I got to be 60, I felt like I was still in my 50s, and people around me were still that were active and healthy. We didn't look, quote unquote, like someone who was 60. And I'm a nurse, and I have been a nurse for many, many years. So I take care of people who are very ill at times. And I take care of people who are my age and they don't look like me. They've had a very different life. But I think what is possible for all of us is a sense of limitlessness around what's possible. I'm serious.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I'm 100% with you.
About, that really, if we, want to live a long time and be mentally alert and physically active, I think we can do that.
And you know what? This is the thing. This is Melody's running a masterclass, and you can really get the tips and strategies and hacks and wisdom that Melody brings. This is not, this is a real person doing real life healthily, and suggesting that, if you're at that cracking point, if you're at that point where you have just been divorced, or someone's passed away, or you've gone into bankruptcy, or your career doesn't fulfill you, or about to retire, so many points of opportunity where that light might come in and you need a guide, then who else better than someone who has actually continued to live in their own light and to do things extraordinary. I'm sorry, 70 miles in a kayak, coming face to face with moose, and I'm sure other things. What was the highlight for you, Melody, of your trip?
Well, the moose experience was pretty fun. But more than anything, being on the water is just incredible joy to me. The mornings, the water was literally like a mirror. There was not it was just crystal clear. The scenery was beautiful. The weather was lovely. And it was just, I was, for this big, long river, I hardly saw people. And
what a blessing and a grace-filled moment. Like, how rare is that in the universe in a planet of 8 billion people, to find yourself at one, and I'm sure the traditional owners, I only always start this series. In fact, I do, and I forgot because we had a chat beforehand, we caught up, but I would take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of the Wiradjuri where I am, and also my ancestral mothers, Latvia, and then the Anglos as well, and also where Melody is. And where are you right now, Melody?
I'm in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, and these were the traditional lands of many Native American nations. Many.
So I'm going to acknowledge those, and you would have traveled down as they did through canoes and, kayak, for want of a better word, through those sacred lands that would have been to theirs, with the moose and everything. And so, I don't know why, but I'm seeing what's the starry night like?
The stars were incredible. There were a couple of nights where it was cloudy, so I didn't actually see the stars. But to tell you the truth, I was so tired after I'd get done every day that I really didn't stay up late and look at the stars. It would have been amazing to do that, but physically, this go around, it was just harder for me than the first time I did the first 100 miles.
Would
I
you
do.
ever take a series of women on with you? Would you ever say, okay, we're going to do it next year. We're going to go on a year-long program. I'm going to show you what I'm doing. So you've got to get out there and do that yourself. You know, you've got to create yourself to be fit enough. Or is it something that you really just think, no, this is my moment. I really love to be solo here.
Well, I don't feel like my kayaking skills are adequate enough to take other people out.
Well, you could get someone else to come with that bit.
I could. I do think about taking people on sacred tours. There are so many beautiful places in the West, in the United States, that are, Native American lands that are just incredibly powerful. And I have been there. And so I've thought about doing that.
There may be some, First Nations people who'd want to partner with you. Maybe.
Absolutely. Maybe. Yeah.
So I thought I'd do something which is a bit radical and call in our Florence Scovel Shinn, who, nearly 100 years ago, right, wrote her first book. And I literally, in the area where I, come to you from, and, it's my sacred space here where I broadcast from. I have her books with me, but I thought I'd open it, and it says The Law of Prosperity, which I think is so interesting. In the game of life, says to do something to show faith. Bless it. Just bless it. Life is an arena where you prove infinite intelligence as your defense and your deliverance, and your immediate and endless supply of all good. And so I think that talks into your element of trust. And so my invitation to the people out there.
Well, I'd actually like to share this. One of my intentions during that trip was every day to bless the water, to envision it full of light, clean and vital and flowing all over the world, and that the light and the energy that I put into the river would go to all the waters of the world, including Fukushima, which is still spewing out radioactive contamination, including all the waters that are in us. So all the lakes, the ponds, the rivers, the oceans, including all the water in us. And we're a high percentage of water. I forget how much we are, but it's a lot. And that was a practice I did every day, that I got on the water.
Thank you for the generosity of that. That's so generous of you to,
and I think
to make
that
your practice for others.
That you can do that every time you take a drink of water. You can bless the water, thank the water, and send blessings and love to the waters of the world.
Thank you, Melody. That's so lovely. I'll start to practice that and try that for myself. Bless that what you want. We would love clean waters for the world.
Yes.
That's a sign of prosperity for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So 3 doorways into your wise woman's soul with Melody Long coming up. If you're watching this now in the year of 2022, it's the month of September. And I'm sure if you're watching this from the far, far future, then you will be able to see Melody's wisdom somewhere. Just Google it, or whatever platform it will be then, and you will find her. If not, and you're blessed and lucky enough to actually be on the planet at the same time, where this beautiful being is embodied and can actually help guide you into a place of knowing your and hearing and seeing your own wise woman self, then I really implore you to work with Melody. She's an absolute gift. And is there anything you'd like to add, Melody?
No, I guess the only thing I would say is if you happen to watch this in recent time, that the master class is on September the 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time in the Facebook group Women's Soul Circle Empowering Women 50 Plus. I've
put the link here, and you can type it in for yourself and have a look. And we'll also put it in the comments. Feel free, Melody, to go and pop it in the comments, and so that people can register and pop along and be part of and find out if they're fit to work with you in the longer term, which I think would be fantastic. Because who wouldn't want to be? Now, reveal your age if you feel like it.
I'm 69.
69! Amazing. I really want to be Melody Long when I'm 69. I want to have your courage. I want to have your grace. I want to have your fitness, your kindness, and definitely your wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today.
It was a delight. Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.